Today we're featuring Alli Zuel, CBA from America's Service Commissions, and we're going to be discussing engaging youth volunteers, how young people are showing up in service. Here's what we'll cover today. We'll explore the motivations, values, and behaviors driving the current wave of youth volunteers and how they differ from previous generations. We'll learn some strategies to effectively engage, empower, and retain young volunteers through tailored opportunities, technology, and community impact initiatives. We'll also discover ways to future-proof your volunteer program by adapting to the evolving trends in youth volunteerism, ensuring sustainability and fostering long-term engagement. So stay tuned to the end because we're going to talk a lot of practical tips and takeaways for engaging youth volunteers, how younger generations talk about and define service, how volunteer leaders can include youth by design, and an overview of the research revealing these important trends in younger volunteers. So let's take it away. Who are today's youth volunteers?
We'll probably pose this question over to you, Alli, but as we kind of get started, who are they? So looking at just kind of some definitions here, that the youth that are traditionally defined as birth through age 25, widespread. Seeds of service can be planted in early childhood with direct attention paid to youth ages 5 to 25. And then in 2024, this represents those generations known as Generation Alpha. That would be my daughters. I was informed just recently that they are the Alpha generation. They're very proud of that. And then Gen Z. We got both of those in the house.
All right, Alli, tell us a little bit about your role here and what you're doing with Ask to share this research.
Yeah, thanks, Court. I'm so excited to be here with you all. Hello, I'm Alli Zuel. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm the Volunteer Engagement Manager at America's Service Commission, also affectionately referred to as ASK or ASC. We've got lots of different names we reply to. And if you're not familiar with America's Service Commissions, we are a nonprofit organization that works with the state service commissions. There are 52 in the United States, and they represent national service and community service across the country. So just as a caveat, as I saw a few Canadians in the chat earlier, a lot of the research that I'll reference today is based on American responses, but that doesn't mean that it wouldn't be applicable to folks that are not in the US. So just as a caveat, a lot of the research is based on American responses. And then state service commissions are responsible for the distribution of AmeriCorps dollars, which is a federal program here in the U.S., as well as promoting a ethic of service across their state or territory.
And I bet we've got a lot of AmeriCorps alum here on our call today. We usually do.
I love it. As Court-chaired, I am an AmeriCorps alum too. And so as part of my work with Ask, we have an emphasis on youth service and getting the next generations involved in service. And we were approached by the Allstate Foundation to participate in some of the research that they are funding. So shout out to the Allstate Foundation and our friends over at CELO, which is the Center for Expanding Leadership and Opportunity, for including myself and my colleague and a few of our network folks in their research and focus groups, and having the ability to talk about this research with you all today. What we'll be focusing a lot on is CELO came out with 2 reports. The first is called Leveraging the Potential of Youth Service, which the audience of this report really is practitioners, volunteer engagement professionals, adults that are a part of nonprofits or schools that are engaging young people in service. And it's really a guide on actionable steps that folks can take to meaningfully engage young people in service. And then we'll also talk about the In Our Own Voices Youth Perspectives on Community Service. This is a companion piece to the report. And the really awesome thing about the In Our Own Voices report is that it was written and edited by young people themselves for young people. So Tiana and Aubriana are both young people, and they partnered with, I think it's about 30 other young folks to write and edit this report, whose target audience, again, is young people. So there are the citations, and I think AK is going to drop the links in the chat so that you can access both of the reports. They're both publicly available.
Yes, I love that. Free to download so everyone can get a copy and read it, just like I've been enjoying reading it for the last few weeks. So let's get into it.
So a question for you all is as we get started is just how do you define service? As we probably all know, service has lots of different definitions. Folks use different words, whether that's community engagement, service learning, civic engagement. And then there are very strong opinions about if you use other words that it means something different. But I would love to hear in the chat from folks about how folks kind of view service or would define service.
Yeah, the first one coming in from Tina. So community engaged learning from the social change wheel is what they've focused in on for service.
Very cool.
Helping others, servicing your community. I'm just going to keep reading. Giving of your time, talent, and passion to your community.
I love that.
Providing, my chat went too fast. Everybody's going to chime in. Providing resources, support, contributing without expectation, caring, selflessly providing time and resources, giving intrinsic motivation, performing needed support. Great.
Awesome. I love how there's so many different ways to describe, the same path moving forward. And I understand that the audience of this webinar is a bunch of volunteer engagement professionals and volunteer managers. So a lot of this will be preaching to the choir or kind of sitting together in community amongst ourselves with a lot of the same challenges or opportunities that we're all facing together in our home organizations. So I've got a little poll for you all to set some context for what I'll share from the report. So you should be able to see the poll. And this is a very quick, what is your first reaction? Is each of the items listed service or not service? In your own opinion, there's no right or wrong answer. So we'll give you a few minutes to do that.
And there's 10 there, so keep scrolling if you don't see all of them. Little yes, no, yes, no.
Thanks, Court. Oh, hey, Sam. Sam from Repair the World. I see you in the chat. It's so awesome to see folks that, you know or you've come across in these types of settings. Court, is there any way to tell how many folks? Oh, hey, Linda. Is there any way to tell how many folks we've had do the poll?
Yep. Right now we've had about half of folks participate in the poll, and that number is going up right now. So we're over 100 people are participating, clocking in. My goodness, we've got 58% of people participating in the poll right now, 60%. So everyone is clicking through. Thank you so much for doing that, everyone. And if I see it slow down, I'll start to go ahead and share those results. Ooh, we got 70% participation. Everyone is clicking through all of those 10 definitions.
Awesome. And again, this is just like first reaction, yes or no. There are no right or wrong answers.
You say that, but then we should probably grab Sam's, maybe Linda's from New Jersey. We'll pull them up on the screen. We're going to mark them. You're going to get evaluated. Just prepare yourselves. Yeah.
Linda would love that.
She would.
100%.
Or no, she actually does not.
Linda's really driving somewhere. That's what she's always doing. She's always on the move.
Sometimes people tune in and listen to the webinars like a live podcast recording. So, well, we've got 76% participation. So I'm going to go ahead and share these results. So I'm going to end the poll. Oh, you guys proved me wrong. We've got 78%. All right, I'm going to go ahead and share the results and leave those up on the screen so that you can take a peek and scroll through those results. Can everyone see okay?
Yeah, I can do good.
Yes, I'm just going to quickly jot them down so that I am not constantly asking you, Court, can you tell me what they were? I'm seeing lots of high numbers, which again, I think is to be expected with the group that we've got. Awesome.
This is going to be interesting. I'm seeing some correlation too, though.
Yes, definitely. So, Court, if you want to go to the next slide, perfect. So the reason for our quick poll was to kind of set the stage for some research that's talked about in the reports from CELO. So CELO conducted a few focus groups of young people. I believe they were aged like 16 to 25 was the age range that they focused on for this. And they asked youth, is this action service according to you? So like, again, would you answer yes or no to each of these items being service? So here on the screen are the results from the focus groups. So 82% of young people in the focus groups thought work with others to make campus or community a better place is service. 97% of the folks on this webinar agreed that that is service. 81% of young people thought that acted to benefit the common good is service. We had 96% of folks. The two that I think are, actually there's three of them I think are super interesting. The last three on this slide: worked with others to address social inequity, communicated with school and or community leaders about a pressing concern, and then the last one, participated in a protest, rally, march, or demonstration. Being those three things being viewed as service, over 50% of young people think that those actions are service. And 93% of the folks on this call thought that working with others to address social inequity is service. 76% of us thought that communicating with school or community leaders about a pressing concern is service, and 63% of us said yes to participating in a protest, rally, march, or demonstration as service. So I think it's really super interesting when you look at when we asked you to define what service is, do these actions fit within that definition that you gave in the chat? Or is this kind of like an expanded view when given kind of these options of activities of what service is? So I've got some reflection questions. And Elizabeth, I'd love to hear kind of your reflections too on this. But folks, feel free, please put it in the chat, and we'll kind of have a little dialogue around some of these reflection questions. How does your response align or differ from a youth ages 18 to 25? So sorry, I misspoke earlier. The focus group was 18 to 25. Were you surprised by the results? What insights do these responses offer about youth perceptions of service? And what shifts could you consider when it comes to engaging youth in volunteerism?
And my head was originally going, Alli, there's such, especially for youth in that group that are in those ages where they are maybe doing service learning, we do have such stringent definitions often for what can count toward your course requirement or what is good enough. I saw in the chat someone saying like convincing them that what they're doing matters it's a big piece of this. I think that is such an important piece that we're actually going to come back to in the design conversation. But yeah, I think it's really, at least I find, with the ones I know, it's kind of if they feel like it matters, it's service. And if they don't understand the context or they can't see that it mattered, then they're not even sure what happened. So I think it's often a lot about how they feel. And that's what I've taken away. I don't know if there's other insights popping into the chat that you're seeing at Kay or Alli that you're able to look at.
No, I love that. And I really think that that is super true from what I have learned through this process with CELO is that Gen Z in particular is super motivated by like seeing impacts in what they're doing. And I think that we can really see that, especially in the volunteerism space and the service space. And so I think that that's a super interesting insight, Elizabeth.
We talked about this a little bit. It's how you're growing up. It's just a generation that's growing up where, watching television with my family is so hard because I'm okay with a commercial and they're losing their minds. Like they want immediate, I have to see what happens next. There is no waiting period. And that's very difficult when a lot of service and change takes years. So I think it's a different way that we have to couch everything these days.
Yeah.
I'll read a couple of these quotes again. I think this came from the Voices of Youth. So this is one Court loved and drew out for us. So Alli, I'll let you talk a little bit more about these in a second. But just first quote, service is important because it's the driving force for change and innovation. There are so many problems we face on a daily basis that can easily be changed. And even more, they can't easily be changed. Actually, I guess I was kind of talking about this. I did a nice segue into this slide. Can't easily be changed unless we put in the time and effort. And if we aren't putting in the effort, who else will? I think it's interesting to hear that these voices came from this age group.
Yeah, and I think it really speaks to maybe older folks underestimating young people as like, oh, well, like it seems like they don't really care. So like, let's just like kind of move on. But really there are lots of young folks that are interested in shaping our world and where we go next. And that includes service.
In the state of play for community service, it's incredibly important for communities to come together to participate in opportunities that benefit the greater good, especially for youth. Service is an opportunity to get to know your community better and surround yourself with people who have mutual respect for each other. Michaela from University of Miami.
Yeah, and I appreciate that Court pulled this one out of the report because I think it really speaks to the sense of community that a lot of folks, and particularly Gen Z, due to like the effects of COVID, are really feeling a loss of with like online learning and not being able to finish out high school or college as they originally intended. It to me, it really speaks of like this wanting of a sense of belonging and being included and a sense of community.
So let's just like touch for a moment on a couple of these challenges I think we're all, aware of, but let's get a little specific about some of them, Alli.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks, Court. So in the report is very comprehensive in what it covers. So it lays out what has been the research for the last 30 years, what are the opportunities? So part of that process was the researchers went through and looked at what are all the different ways and terms that we're looking at describing the same thing. So again, like volunteering, civic engagement, advocacy, service learning, all of these different terms have either very well-known definitions or pocket definitions or perceptions, which make it hard to kind of meld or mold into a broader kind of definition that would be inclusive of a lot of the activities that are being viewed as service by young people. And there, as we saw in the chat, there is not a universal understanding of what service means, includes, excludes, that type of thing. And then as far as gaps, I was astonished to know that there has not been a lot of research done on volunteerism, service, national service, within the last 30 years. And a lot of the best practices research that a lot of folks are relying on was done decades ago. And so that was one of the gaps that the researchers identified when they were going through a lit review and looking for different bodies of work to cite during the research. Yeah, I think that's good for gaps. And then for benefits of youth in service, I feel like this is a little bit of, again, being in this space with all of you wonderful volunteer engagement professionals. Benefits of engaging youth in service is that sense of belonging, mental and physical, like health and well-being. There's lots of research coming out of the Surgeon General's office around loneliness and how Gen Z and Gen Alpha are being set up to be like the loneliest generations. Service, as we all know, can be an antidote to that. There's different motivations and the ways to show your dedication through service. I think like there are lots of different benefits to engaging youth in service, whether that be short term or long term. So I think I should have gave a spoiler alert earlier when I mentioned that 62% of Gen Z believe that they can create positive change in their communities, which I thought was very insightful given the turbulent world that we all live in. Sometimes I even find myself being like, I am not watching the news. Just like, if I don't know about it, it doesn't exist, that type of thing. With the report and the focus group and the study and research that went into the CELA reports, they found that 70% of youth ages 18 to 25 report engaging in monthly service when service is defined more broadly. Which, if you are not up to date on a lot of the data in volunteer engagement or service, the census reports around 25 to 33% of young people, depending on the age range, are involved in formal volunteerism. The rate jumps a little bit when you look at what's called informal helping, which is like helping your neighbor, helping your grandma, those types of things. It jumps about another 10%, again, depending on the age range. So this is super insightful and like almost threefold of a difference when we look at service being more inclusive of different activities, including the activities that we took the poll on earlier.
Yeah, I find that incredibly encouraging. Go for it, Elizabeth.
Definitely encouraging. I think I'm right here, but service is defined more broadly. We're talking about that more broader definition where we saw all the different things, even in the poll, that could be defined as service to someone in that 18 to 25-year-old group. Is that right?
Yeah, so the goal of this research project was to figure out if we as a field look at a broader definition of service rather than saying like this is service, this is not service, and looking at different activities that could be defined as service. If we do that, then are more folks engaging in service? And I'll share the new definition of or expanded definition of service in just a minute. I think that's actually the next slide. Or in two slides. But yes, so it's really the idea of, which is not a new idea, but it's essentially around the idea of like meeting folks where they're at and meeting young people where they're at and expanding or shifting what we as volunteer engagement professionals, volunteer managers, view as like what fits into our box as volunteerism and kind of expanding that out to be inclusive of what younger folks are wanting and willing to do.
That's where, like, as you said, Court, it's encouraging because I do think we get that perception they're not showing up. And I think this would say they're showing up, they're just not showing up exactly where we expected them to show up, or they're showing up differently. And how do we recognize that? Because I think the powerful part of these quotes is they want to step into the gaps. I think the part that as professionals in the field is like, some work is already happening. It's been happening for decades. So how do we connect what they're working on to what has been so that those two things come together? That's what I like seeing around the edges here is like, how can what is meet what's coming so that this gets to flow together and not pull against each other?
100%. And Elizabeth, I think that leans into another Elizabeth's question around like, can you give examples? Sure. So the easiest example that I use when talking about this broader definition of service, I think that front desk volunteers are a wonderful volunteer opportunity for lots of places. You're likely not going to be able to find a young person that has the time commitment to sit at a front desk and welcome folks, which again is a very meaningful and needed volunteer opportunity. Like they may not have the 3 hour shift that you like to do it in the 3 hour shift, but a young person may resonate with your mission or a program that you have, and they would be willing to organize their friends to come do a one-time event where it's a bunch of 17-year-olds coming with a chaperone to fold clothes at the thrift store, or they would be willing to help you craft social media posts to reach younger folks, or they would organize their friends to do like online giving, social giving, those types of things. We had a team alignment meeting yesterday, and Court mentioned mutual aid. Mutual aid is a huge thing amongst young people, or if you're looking at like GoFundMe and like giving money to other people, individuals, giving money to organizations and in smaller manageable amounts to reach a specific goal, that really resonates with young people.
Yeah,
I
and
love
looking
seeing
at
the
these,
chat.
oh, sorry, I was going to say, Allie, and looking at these three things, like what, how, and why, a lot of what I'm observing is younger people being really excited about things that have an immediate benefit for somebody else. Anything where they know they can help somebody really quickly and directly, there's a lot of enthusiasm and action behind that. And I'm curious about that, especially when we get to like the design portion of this, is like really like how do we communicate that something is meaningful and helpful in an immediate way.
Yeah, definitely. And just for the sake of the group, so this slide hosts the expanded definition of service that the report outlines. It's focused around and framed in three central questions: what, how, and why. So what acts intended to benefit people and or communities? How, by enhancing connections and relationships? Why, to address issues and strengthen communities. So when you're thinking about what potential activities volunteers can do under the expanded definition of service, like there are lots of activities that could fit this. So that goes back to the listing that we did the poll on. So like participating in a rally or a protest. Does that benefit people and our communities? Does it enhance connections and relationships? Does it address issues and strengthen communities? So like, yes. So there are, again, this is taking a broader view at what is considered service to, I think, amplify the different ways that folks are showing up, and then specifically young people, but I also think that it might be applicable to older folks as well that are looking for other ways. Maybe they don't like to leave their house a lot, so like are there different ways that folks can be engaged in service that aren't what we did pre-COVID, aren't what we did during COVID, but are kind of a new normal, if you will. So this slide, it talks about how youth-led, youth-driven service, which is kind of the shorter terminology that this group ended up using, really emphasizes the impact that youth themselves can have on the field of volunteer engagement, volunteerism, service, by contributing, not just participating in service. So what I mean by contributing, young people can plan service events for you. They can be the driver of service to show adults, professionals, their teachers, administration at school, what types of things are appealing to them in the realm of service. So this slide offers the 6 core elements that are listed in the report that are associated with youth-led, youth-driven service. So talking about a greater sense of agency and purpose, valuable and transferable life and professional skills. I think that that's a big one when looking at experience, opportunities, motivation, dedication, and skills to engage and lead service, and the collective interest and investment in community well-being. So there's lots of different motivations to be aware of. There's lots of different elements that are at play here, just like when we're talking about not Generation Z or Gen Alpha.
Bit interesting too here. It's making me smile because I'm seeing the food suggestion in the chat. But I think we talked a little bit about this before when we were kind of preparing for today, that it takes time to get a younger generation to start talking and opening up and bringing their ideas. I think that's always frustrating for me as a facilitator because I'm like, okay, what do you guys want to do? And it's like crickets. And I think that's with this group intentionally sitting down with them, having those moments to build community around food. Like there's this moment where it tips. And I think some of you have probably seen that where they just relax and they start passing plates or they're sharing food or they're talking to each other. And that's when you can start to see what do they really want to do? What is it that they're finding valuable in the experience? What is it they'd like to try next? So that they just don't come right off the bat necessarily. And I think I just want to call that out, that building community, time together to build community around food, around hot cocoa, whatever it might be, is also time for you to start to see what they resonate with on this page in their own words. What will they come up with when given the space?
Yeah, Elizabeth, thanks for that. And I think that kind of ties into the comment that Barbara made in the chat about how like even if folks are required to do volunteer hours for school, like it's still hard to get folks to show up. In that instance, I would encourage you to tap into your younger volunteers that you have, even if they've shown up once, and ask them, like, why did you choose us? Why, what was appealing about this opportunity? Okay, well, their answer is it was required for school. Okay, so then why didn't you choose to go to the food pantry instead? Oh, the time worked out. Okay, great. So then like what would make it better and make you want to come back? Kind of tapping into the youth themselves as a resource to help you shape some of your opportunities is a really impactful and useful skill you'll see later on when we talk about this in the report, and it's in the report too, about how youth themselves can be a really great tool to amp up your youth service opportunities.
I really appreciate that youth-led, youth-driven, and tapping into the youth, because I can just say, based on what I observed in my neighborhood, as you know, I live in Asheville where Hurricane Helene hit, and in my neighborhood, there were pockets of youth-led, youth-driven distribution of resources. And one of the things that I noticed was in going to drop off donations, they were really clear, like, you know, people 20 years younger than me, we can't take this, but we can take this. Can you drive over here and drop that off somewhere else? And I realized that the biggest thing I could do is just say, yeah, absolutely. And like take the lead, because they had taken the initiative to set up this distribution. They weren't even a nonprofit. They had self-organized at a bookstore, and it was the employees of the bookstore were doing distribution, and just like following their lead that they had actually organized themselves. 20 years younger than me. And you know, it was lovely because they didn't necessarily have the same things they needed to take care of at home, like, you know, kids or something like that. And so they had energy and they had time to get really, really organized really, really quickly. And they were helping a lot of people, and to just take the lead from them was great. And they helped a lot of people during a very critical time in our community. So I can really appreciate that from this perspective.
Thanks for that, Court. And Hannah is echoing that sentiment in the chat as well, talking about creating a space where Gen Z can volunteer with a friend, or moments outside of volunteering to make connections and friends will have a a larger turnout. So fellowship is huge. So like that sense of community and being a part of the service, being a part of the process rather than being plugged in, I think is super impactful. So the next really great thing about the report, which we'll spend a few moments in or more than a few, is what the researchers and the work group, which I was a part of, is calling design considerations. These are essentially ideas that folks can implement and look at when trying to reach more young people with their service opportunities. We recognize that not every design consideration will be able to be implemented at every single organization, but even if you can start with one or two, it will really help you engage youth more meaningfully earlier in the process of determining what types of roles, what types of opportunities, where, when, uh, with your volunteer roles that are really going to make it so that youth want to keep coming back and meaningfully engage. So the design considerations fall under youth-led, youth-driven, access, quality, reciprocity, and change strategy as kind of the overall arching buckets. And then if you go to the next slide, these are all of the design considerations that are listed in the report. On CELO's website, there's also a resources page, and AK, I can get you the link after this too if we don't have that specific one. But you can find it on CELO's website, the resource library. There is a design considerations worksheet that lists all of the questions with space for like taking notes so that you could walk through, for example, take one of your volunteer positions and walk through the design considerations to make notes on where are you hitting yes and where are you maybe looking at the potential to shift or make some changes. So with youth-led, youth-driven service, I would say the overarching kind of sentiment is utilizing youth in the planning process, not just being an adult saying, here is the service opportunity that we will be participating in. This is when you show up. This is when you'll leave. This is what we'll be doing. But asking young people, even if it's one or two, saying, here is our need. What types of things can you think of that would fit the need? I want to say I'm not telling folks that you need to like abandon your mission or abandon your programming to cater to Gen Z and Gen Alpha volunteers. It's more, to me, I would describe it as a mindset shift. And okay, here is our need or our problem. Hey, I have a 7-year-old. Her name is Aislinn. I would say, Aislinn, like, here's my problem. Like, what sounds fun to you that we could go and do to help other people? You could create your own focus group of young people. Youth-led councils are a super big thing in some parts of our field. And again, it's asking them and then taking their advice or their words into consideration and then trying to implement it to your best abilities. Now, not everything that folks may say could be implemented, but it's really making them a part of the process in determining what types of service opportunities would be attractive to young people.
Alli, I think we talked a little bit about this, but I think as you're transitioning and you may have things that can't be completely youth, you have to have that adult because of the degree of risk. You have to use this as a matrix, ask yourself, where does it fit? If it doesn't fit anywhere on here, then maybe we need a new project. But I think we were talking too about, the distribution centers is just part of part of my life right now. But that part of making sure that a volunteer pool that it does have mixed ages leave space for each other. I had shared the experience with you that, my daughter, who is alpha, she's young, was ready to distribute it and kind of was there to pass out things. But every time someone came to get something, an adult kind of stepped in front of her to help more efficiently, more effectively. And she was very frustrated because my daughter was there to do her thing. So I think like that's really how, I think you said yourself, just setting the stage is really important for your current volunteer pool to understand how to leave space for your other volunteer pools. So I just wanted to ask you to share a little more about that because that was helpful for me.
Yeah, I think a part of this work for me is looking at how can we make spaces more welcoming to young people. Again, in this context is around young people. And to me, that could look like doing a training for adult volunteers on how to interact with younger folks that are there to engage. To me, that would be saying like everyone, it could be a team meeting. So we use the distribution center a lot. Example, like at the distribution center before the shift starts, everybody is called in for a team meeting and we say, look around. This is the set of volunteers that we've got to volunteer today. We've got ages from 14 to 87. And, everybody here is here to do the same job. Everybody here is able to ask for help if they need help. But everybody here also has a specific role that they'll be filling here on the distribution line. So like if someone asks for help, feel free to help, but like otherwise we're all here and ready to do our jobs. I think is a really impactful way to kind of stand with younger volunteers and amplify the sentiment that that they can do the volunteer opportunity. You're not just expecting them to get stepped in front of or to drop all the eggs on the ground. It's really about empowering and showing up for younger volunteers too. And sometimes that looks like asking other adult volunteers or adult staff to allow the younger folks to engage themselves rather than being aided or or kind of looked over.
I think that's space for feedback too, because I'm not too shy, but my child definitely is not shy, and it was I don't want to go back. They didn't need me, and I think that's the part that you're trying to seek that feedback. It may be they're not returning because they didn't feel the need. I love this that we're seeing in the chat about the pairing of the ages to even pair two youth together so that they're building community, they're paired together, they're seeing that they can do it together. So that's building the confidence where a solo youth may not be ready yet. So great ideas. I'm loving the chat. Thank you guys for sharing those things.
Yes, I love that.
Yeah, and I really enjoy all of the creativity that this opens up as well. Because even in certain roles where you do have to have somebody 18 plus or somebody with a specific amount of training or certification, right? There's still room to be creative about engaging youth in advocacy, in, marketing for your organization, right? Elizabeth, I know your daughters like to do all kinds of things and they've done the door-to-door thing and collecting donations and there's things that youth can do that maybe it's a program that doesn't even exist yet. Or it's a role like that hasn't been designed yet. Because sometimes maybe it's a way that they've been touched by a family member that had a particular challenge and they care about your cause, even if they can't, directly volunteer in the traditional direct service sort of way. So I love that this opens up conversation and it opens up creativity and it also expands, what volunteerism might be for an individual organization.
I think a lot of this takes practice. I think that's what I see, especially with younger kids. It's that modeling behavior So, to your point, like our neighborhood recently had like a hot cocoa party, but they did a fundraiser as, there was like a raffle for East Fork mugs, if anyone's ever seen those. And, it was $880 raised from just a little neighborhood giving back to give to the Black Mountain Home because they need it right now during Helene. But it was the kid at the microphone. It was his mom talking about where they had spread the word about the raffle and how they had gone and gotten some extra raffle tickets at different places where her kids had told the story of what it was for. And they got to announce the results. And I think like that's the part that's so critical is they had so much fun with that. But you've got to put them in the spotlight. You've got to let them be part of the announcements, part of the strategy. And I think that's everything you're talking about here, Allie, is that's a simple idea, but that 8-year-old is going to do it again at 10 and at 13 and at 18. And you're building this practice where they're getting comfortable with it. Oh, this is really, I'm going to do this with my kids. I'm going to do this with my friends. What can I do next year that tops this? That's what we need, that kind of energy and momentum, which is so exciting to see starting young.
Definitely. And one of the kind of ideas I brought to the work group was we kind of need to view engaging young volunteers in a similar vein as we look at like cultivating volunteers into donors. And, like you're cultivating that relationship with your volunteers to hopefully they'll become donors, or the reverse of like cultivating your donors, so then maybe they'll volunteer with you. When you're engaging young people, if you keep that kind of relationship going, even if it's annually or even just, connected via social media and all of the platforms that young folks are on, like keeping that relationship and, if you will, like the good taste in their mouth about volunteering in your organization. Someday you may be having a 12-year-old who becomes like the next Taylor Swift and like has the ability to donate bajillions of dollars to your organization or to the cause at large that you work in. And so I think it's really about kind of using that mindset of like cultivation from young folks into, potential regular volunteers, like not regular, but more more regular in time volunteers as they become an adult.
It might be good to segue to you, Allie. I think you had mentioned mini grants that the ASC and ASK had been kind of putting out. Like this is a neat way that you guys are just supporting this type of neat work.
Yeah, thanks, Elizabeth. Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. So part of the way that we at America's Service Commissions are implementing this specific work is we are offering mini grants of up to $1,500 to youth commissioners. So many of the state service commissions have youth commissioners that are also appointed to their commission. And so these are folks that are age 16 to 25, and they are the youth representative on their commission. And so we're offering mini grants, and we really wanted it to be very low barrier, very easy for folks to take advantage of this opportunity. And our only parameters was that the youth commissioner is the one that applies for the grant, and they are the one that is the driving force behind the service project. We didn't have any parameters around the type of service, when it needed to be done, how long it needed to be. And we've seen some really cool service opportunities. So on our social media 2 weeks ago, right after Thanksgiving, we highlighted Chris from Michigan. Chris, with his mini grant, put on a mental health fair and a basketball tournament. So the young men played basketball, and they talked about like the importance of good mental health and resources that they had available in their community. We've also had youth commissioner from New Jersey do tree planting on their campus. We've had confidence building for high school seniors as they transition into college. So one kind of a few hiccups that we ran into with the mini grants is we did not want to provide the $1,500 mini grant directly to the youth commissioners, because that would create a tax liability for the youth commissioners. So we asked them to partner with nonprofit. Many commissions are state agencies, so they could do that as well. So that there wasn't that burden upon the youth commissioner, but we made it very clear to our network that the youth commissioner was kind of the one in charge. We were working with them at their piece and supporting them as they could. And at my last tally, I think we've granted a little over $20,000 in mini grants to youth commissioners across the country. We've done Idaho, New Jersey, Michigan, Iowa. I'm going to miss a whole bunch of folks, but all around the country. And it's been really impactful just to see the variety of different projects, because all of our youth commissioners are so diverse in age and background and lived experiences and hobbies that it's been really cool to see what they've proposed as their mini projects.
I think it's really neat there, Allie, when you were saying like it wasn't so restricted. Like I know this takes money and takes funding, but I do think it's an interesting opportunity if you have a funder to plant the seed to say, if we leave this very open, then we're able to see where are they stepping in. Like we just talked about, they want to show up. It's just maybe not how we expected them to or what we would have traditionally done. So I think that also is really exciting to see, is like when you let them lead, where do they lead us? Like what is it they care about? What are they going to step into?
Yeah, definitely.
And I think Alli too, as we're kind of like rounding the corner here at the end of our time, if you could just like speak a little bit about the access piece.
Yeah.
That one really, I know, stood out in the research, and I'm just curious if you could give a couple of insights into that, especially this one about the role of compensation that can feel confusing in volunteerism.
Yeah, definitely. So with access as one of the design considerations, it looks at lots of different things around like barriers to service, engagement level. Are these relevant experiences to youth? And it poses the idea of compensation. I know that compensation around volunteerism is a very hot topic. And the report is not one way or the other. It just asks like, are you able to provide potentially like mileage reimbursement or bus fare, subway fare? Are you able to, food was brought up earlier. Like, are you able to provide either necessities that someone would be skipping when volunteering, or are you able to provide kind of a reimbursement for some expenses that would be expended while volunteering? There's research around Gen Z that they are very highly hyper focused on the role of compensation and not working for free. Which again is a very hot topic when you view it from the lens of volunteerism. But it's just something to consider, and whether you are able to, and viewed from the lens of accessibility, not necessarily like making folks wealthy off of doing volunteer roles.
Yeah, and I also appreciate the access point in the research talking about, only some youth volunteers are attending college. And so if all the youth volunteerism is surrounding school or higher education, then, who out of this age group isn't being included, and how can we create access points to them, which I think brings us to some of this, what's the path forward, and how can these design considerations be implemented?
Yes. So this is one of my favorite things to talk about is the path forward. So really, again, it's about amplifying youth voices and letting them lead, letting them take the opportunity to design or co-design opportunities for other young folks. And again, the path forward also included the providing training for yourself or other adults that are most proximate to youth, because again, it's about the inclusivity and about the sense of belonging that can't happen if there are roadblocks within your organization. Easing on ramps and pathways into service. This is kind of where the role of compensation can fit in. It can also fit in with Are you offering? So if you have a youth member on your board, do your board meetings take place at noon on Tuesdays during the school year? Then maybe that is not the most accessible time for your youth member to attend board meetings. Or if it is, are you providing transportation or other things that would help ease that on ramp? Engaging with the design considerations, which again, even if it's just one or two, that's a great start. And then the other recommendation that the report calls out is reshaping scholarship on service to address the contemporary realities. This kind of feeds back into there hasn't been a lot of research done specifically to service. Outside of like service learning, AmeriCorps, like just broader service within the last 30 years. And then the last three call outs are we really need to listen to young people to disrupt what we all think as kind of the conventional conceptions. And that youth really are seeking meaningful opportunities. They want to be involved and they want to serve. And then smoothing the pathways and enabling access into increasingly meaningful service is essential.
Well, I want to say thank you, Alli. I know we talked about so much in this hour and we ended right on time. But a big thank you to Alli Zuel from from America's Service Commissions for coming and bringing this research. We're going to make sure to include all of those links. And also, I believe Alli is the point of contact for the youth microgrants. So we'll make sure to include that as well for those of you who might want to partner with some youth in your area to promote a micro grant program. And you can access all of the reports at expandingleadership.org/youth-service. These reports are incredible. You can spend some real time diving into them and taking a read. And just thanks for joining us for our 2024 series of innovative approaches to volunteer leadership. It's been an incredible year, and we're definitely looking forward to having you back next year. So just thank you, Elizabeth. Thank you, AK. And thank you so much, Alli. And thank you to all of you, the volunteer leaders who came to be here in community. And we'll make sure to get you all those resources. So thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you, especially to Court. She has put these on every single month. For those of you who come month after month, a little kudos back to you, Court.
Thanks, Elizabeth. It's been a joy. And we'll also make sure to include the chat because there's a lot of great comments and ideas in there. And we'll get that for you in follow up. Alli, any last words before you sign off? Just encouraging youth volunteerism.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. It's been great. And feel free to reach out to me directly. I think AK put my email in there, or if you just Google America's Service Commissions, I'm on the staff page and happy to chat with folks.
And have a good afternoon, everybody. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for attending. And we will see you back again in January 2025. So stay tuned. Thank you, Alli. This was awesome.
Thanks, Alli.
All right, friends, I'm logging off and I'll email you later. Bye.